All right, so are you ready to dive deep?
Always.
Okay, good, because today we're going to be tackling The Technological Society.
Ellul.
Yeah, by Jacques Ellul. And this is a classic work, I think it's safe to say,
Absolutely.
that explores the often hidden ways that technique shapes our lives and, our world.
You're sure.
And I think a lot of people hear that word technique and they think, that's just technology, right?
Right.
Like, is it just a synonym for that? But Ellul,
He goes way beyond.
yeah, he goes way beyond that, right?
Much deeper.
So tell us, like, how is Ellul using this term technique? What does he mean?
Well, he saw it as like this total system, this all-encompassing system that we use
Okay.
to like achieve our goals. So it's about the pursuit of efficiency.
Yeah, okay.
It's about finding the one best way to do something.
Uh-huh.
And it's almost like this automatic reflex that we have,
Okay.
where we just assume that every problem has a technical solution.
So it's almost like this force, right?
Yeah.
That is pushing us in a certain direction towards certain ways of,
A certain way of thinking and a certain way of acting,
yeah.
for sure.
That's kind of creepy when you think about it.
Yeah. It's one of those things that kind of makes you see the world
Yeah.
in a whole new way once you start thinking about it.
So, I mean, is this like a new thing?
Well, no, that's the thing. Ellul argues that technique has been around for
nice.
centuries. You can even see it in ancient civilizations.
Okay.
Like, think about the Romans with their incredible organization.
Okay.
Like super organized legal systems, efficient military strategies, impressive infrastructure. All that. Exactly. They were all about
Yeah.
using technique to achieve their goals.
So even back then, they were already striving for this, like efficiency and control.
Totally.
So it's not just like a modern thing.
Nope, not at all.
Right.
But where things start to shift
Okay.
is around the 16th, 17th century.
Yeah, what happened then?
Well, you start to see a new emphasis on rational, systematic approaches to knowledge.
Okay.
And this really lays the groundwork for the explosion of technique
Right.
that happens in the 19th century.
Yeah, that's when things really take off, right?
Big time.
But okay, before we get to the 19th century, Ellul talks about the steam engine.
Oh, yeah. Great example.
And he uses that to make a point about how, like, the relationship between science and technology isn't always so straightforward.
It's not a straight line.
Yeah.
Like we tend to think that it goes science leads to discovery.
Right, exactly.
And that leads to technology.
Yeah.
But the steam engine is a great example of how that's not always the case.
So people were already using steam engines before they fully understood, like, the science behind it.
Totally. It was all about practical tinkering and problem solving, and like people were building these things.
So trial and error.
Yeah, a lot of trial and error.
Fascinating. I mean, that kind of upends our whole idea of how innovation happens, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And the thing is, science came in later and tried to catch up.
Right.
And explain how it actually worked.
I see. So it was working before they figured out why it worked?
Exactly.
Have you ever encountered anything like that in your field?
Oh, absolutely.
Where, people were doing something and they were getting results and then kind of science came along?
And tried to explain it.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. A good reminder that progress isn't always...
linear.
Yeah, that nice, neat little package.
Okay, so we've got ancient civilizations using technique. We've got this shift in thinking in the 16th, 17th centuries.
Right.
And then boom, the 19th century hits.
Yeah.
And technique really explodes onto the scene.
It takes off.
What happened in the 19th century that caused this to happen? Like, why then?
Well, Ellul has, a few different ideas.
Okay.
Obviously, you have population growth. You have a favorable economic environment. You have this accumulation of technical knowledge.
Okay.
But what he thinks was the most important was how people viewed technical solutions.
Okay.
So there's this emergence of what he calls a technical intention.
Okay.
This idea that, like, almost automatically, a technical solution is the answer to any problem.
I see.
So almost like, without question, that's just how you would approach any problem.
So it's not just that the technology was there, it's that people started thinking about it differently.
Absolutely.
Like, oh, there's a problem, let's find a technical solution.
Exactly. It's like technique became the default.
The default.
The go-to for solving every problem.
Does that ring true to you in your experience?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, you see that happening?
All the time.
And here's where things get really interesting. Because Ellul points to a surprising figure who actually contributed to this way of thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Karl Marx.
Right.
You wouldn't think that, right?
You wouldn't expect him to be a champion of technique.
Yeah, like the Communist Manifesto guy, you know?
Exactly.
But he had a different take on it, didn't he?
He did. I mean, you'd think he'd be kind of suspicious of technology,
Right.
given its role in industrial capitalism and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
But he saw it as something that could actually liberate the working class.
Okay.
Like, he believed that machines could help overcome,
Okay.
the alienation of industrial labor.
Right.
And could lead to a more just and equitable society.
So even though he's known for critiquing capitalism, he's also
It contributed
contributing to this idea.
This technocentric worldview.
Yeah. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right?
Totally.
I mean, technology can be used for good or bad.
Absolutely.
And it shows how complex these historical forces are, doesn't it?
For sure.
Okay, so we've got ancient Romans, shifting mindsets, the steam engine, Karl Marx. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But Ellul, he also mentions this fascinating little detail about these early machines being adorned with decorations.
Oh, yeah.
Like people were trying to, make them look pretty.
Like make them fancy. Yeah, he talks about how, especially in those early days of industrialization, there was this tension between traditional aesthetics and the new kind of aesthetic of the machine.
I see.
So like think about those ornate steam engines with
Yeah.
all the like decorative flourishes. It's almost like
We're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, right?
yeah, like trying to make these powerful machines fit
Yeah.
into this older sense of beauty and ornamentation.
So they hadn't fully embraced like the purely functional aesthetic of machines yet?
Not quite.
It seems like they were still holding on to,
A bit of that, yeah, older artistic sensibility.
but then like as technique kind of advances.
It took over.
Yeah.
Those decorative elements start to disappear.
Right.
And functionality becomes the dominant value.
Efficiency wins out.
Efficiency trumps everything.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, can you see any examples of that tension today?
Oh, that's a great question.
Between like the decorative and the purely functional.
Yeah, I'm thinking like maybe in some of those minimalist designs, where it's like, oh, so stripped down.
Yeah, it's almost sterile sometimes.
It's so sterile, yeah.
It's like they've totally abandoned any sense of beauty
Yeah.
or artistry.
But I also wonder if those early machines were still decorated, do you think people were less afraid of them?
That's a really interesting point.
Like maybe it softened the blow of this new technology.
Maybe it was a way to make them seem less threatening.
Right. Like, oh, it's got flowers on it, so it can't be that bad.
It's kind of a way to humanize them.
Yeah. But I guess as technique advanced, it also became more invisible.
Yeah, more integrated into everyday life.
Yeah, it's just everywhere now, right? So we don't even notice it.
It's almost like we take it for granted.
But that makes Ellul's point even more powerful, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
If we don't even see it, how can we possibly question it?
Exactly.
How can we challenge its influence?
It's a blind spot.
And that's kind of what he's warning us about, right?
That's the danger. And it's why his work is still so relevant, even all these years later.
Okay, so we've established technique is not just about gadgets and gizmos.
It's a mindset.
Yeah, it's this force that shapes our thinking, our behavior, and, often in ways that we're not even aware of.
Right.
But Ellul, he doesn't just stop at describing the problem, does he? He also digs into some of these core characteristics of technique that make it so powerful.
He does. He identifies 3 key characteristics that help explain why it's so pervasive and often problematic.
Okay, give them to me. Hit me with it. What are they?
Self-augmentation, autonomy, and universalism.
Okay, let's break those down one by one. What does he mean by self-augmentation?
Well, what he's getting at is this tendency of technique to constantly improve and expand itself.
So it's like always trying to get better and bigger?
It's like a self-perpetuating cycle.
Okay.
Every technical advancement, every new solution creates new problems, and those problems need new solutions.
So it's never ending.
Kind of, yeah, this constant quest for efficiency and optimization.
It's almost like a snowball effect, right?
Exactly. It just keeps rolling and getting bigger and bigger.
And that leads us to his idea of autonomy, doesn't it? This idea that technique takes on a life of its own.
Exactly. He argues that technique develops its own internal logic and momentum.
Okay.
To the point where it becomes almost indifferent to human values and intentions.
Wait, so we create these things, but then they end up controlling us?
That's the concern. It's
Yeah.
like we lose control of the very tools that we created.
That's pretty scary when you think about it.
Yeah, a bit unsettling.
Are we seeing examples of that already, do you think?
I think so, yeah. Think about social media.
Okay.
It was designed to connect people.
Right.
But it often leads to isolation and anxiety.
Yeah, for sure.
Or algorithms designed to make our lives easier, but can end up reinforcing bias and inequality.
It's like the law of unintended consequences, right?
It is. We never quite know how these things are going to play out in the long run.
Okay, so those are two pretty powerful characteristics, self-augmentation and autonomy. But what about the third one, universalism? What's that all about?
That's where Ellul gets into how technique doesn't just impact specific areas of life.
Okay.
It seeks to govern everything.
It's everywhere.
It aims for universal application and standardization.
So it's like it wants to create this uniform world where everything runs smoothly and efficiently.
Precisely. And that's where things get really interesting and potentially problematic.
Okay, so let's dig into that because I'm not sure I fully understand how a quest for efficiency could be a bad thing.
Well, stay tuned. We'll explore that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, sounds good. I'm ready to go deeper.
Me too. Let's do it.
All right, so we're talking about universalism, this idea that technique doesn't just impact specific areas of life.
Right. It wants to govern everything.
And you were about to explain why this quest for efficiency could actually be a bad thing.
Yeah, it's kind of a paradox, right?
Yeah.
We strive for efficiency, but by doing so, we might actually be giving up control.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, think about it. If efficiency is the ultimate goal,
right? Mm-hmm.
Then everything that doesn't contribute to that goal is seen as like unnecessary or even like wasteful.
Oh, wait.
So individuality, creativity, spontaneity.
The messy stuff.
All those things get pushed aside.
Because they don't fit neatly into the system.
Exactly. They don't fit into that standardized system.
So it's not just about machines and technology.
Right.
It's like a whole way of thinking.
It's a mindset.
Where you just prioritize the technical and the efficient above all else.
Exactly. It's like we're turning everything into a machine, including ourselves.
And Ellul, he suggests that this can lead to some pretty negative consequences.
Yeah, like the homogenization of cultures.
Okay.
The suppression of individuality.
So everyone becomes the same.
It pushes us in that direction. It's like this kind of bland uniformity where everyone thinks and acts in the same way.
And where difference is a bad thing.
Yeah, difference and diversity become obstacles rather than assets.
Okay, now I'm really starting to see the dark side of all this. It's like we're trading our freedom and our individuality for this promise of a more efficient, predictable world.
Exactly. And what's interesting is Ellul doesn't stop there.
Okay, where does he go next?
He looks at how this technique mindset is impacting our institutions.
Like what?
Like the state and the economy.
Okay, so how does technique affect something like the state?
Well, he argues that the modern state, no matter what its ideology is becoming increasingly reliant on technique to manage society.
So even democracies?
Yeah, even democracies.
Wow.
He sees it as almost inevitable.
Why?
Because as societies get more complex and interconnected, the state needs more sophisticated tools.
To keep things running smoothly.
Exactly, to maintain order and control.
And those tools are?
Technical systems.
Oh, I see.
And those systems end up shaping how the state functions.
So it's not just about evil dictators or authoritarian regimes.
Right.
It's like the very structure of the state is becoming more technical.
Exactly.
Regardless of who's in charge.
He has a pretty chilling example of how this plays out.
What is it?
Concentration camps.
Whoa, that seems a little extreme.
It is. But his point is they've appeared under different political systems.
Right.
He argues that it's not just about ideology or cruelty. It's also about the technical necessities of control and surveillance.
So even in a democracy, we could see this kind of thing happening?
It's a possibility, yeah. Especially as societies get more complex and technology advances.
It's like a slippery slope, right? You start with these seemingly benign technologies, and then it can lead to something far more sinister.
Exactly.
And it's not just the state, right?
Oh, yeah. Right. He makes a similar argument about the economy.
Okay, so how does technique impact the economy?
He says it drives the evolution of economic systems.
In what way?
Towards greater efficiency, control, centralization.
So whether it's capitalism or socialism?
It doesn't matter.
The end result is the same.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
A world dominated by technique.
So Ellul is saying that as technology advances, the differences between those economic models become less meaningful.
That's what he's getting at. Whether it's a corporation trying to maximize profits or a government managing a planned economy, They're both prioritizing the same things.
What's that?
Efficiency, control over individual liberty and autonomy.
Okay, so that's a pretty bleak picture.
It is.
Does Ellul offer any solutions?
Well, not in the traditional sense, but
Oh,
he does push us to think differently
about what?
about our relationship with technology.
Okay, so he's not saying we should, like, smash the machines and go off the grid.
Not exactly. He's more about becoming aware of the problem.
Oh, okay.
Recognizing how deeply technique is embedded in everything.
And then what?
Then we can start to make more conscious choices.
About how we interact with technology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And about how we shape its development.
Okay, so awareness is key. But what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, I think he would say we need to develop a more critical attitude towards technology.
Okay.
We can't just blindly accept everything new that comes along.
Right.
We need to be more discerning, more thoughtful.
So, like, before I buy that new gadget,
Yeah.
I should stop and ask myself some questions.
Absolutely.
Wait.
What? Like, do I really need this?
Yeah.
What are the trade-offs? What are the unintended consequences?
Oh, okay.
Is this really making my life better?
Yeah.
Or is it just making me more dependent?
So it's about being mindful.
Being mindful, exactly.
But it's not just about individual choices, is it?
Right. We also need to be thinking about the bigger picture.
What do you mean?
The social and ethical implications of technology.
Okay.
How is this affecting our relationships?
Yeah.
Is it bringing people together, or is it isolating us?
Right.
Is it empowering us, or is it making us more susceptible to manipulation?
Yeah. Those are tough questions.
They are.
And I'm not sure everyone's ready to face them.
I know. It's much easier to just go with the flow, right?
Right.
Embrace the latest and greatest tech without really thinking about it.
Yeah, for sure. But Ellul would say that's dangerous.
Oh, absolutely.
He's saying that if we don't start asking these questions,
Right.
we risk losing something essential about what it means to be human.
It's about more than just convenience or efficiency.
It's about our very humanity.
Yeah.
That's pretty profound.
It is. He's worried that technique, if we let it run wild, could lead to a world where human beings are basically just functions.
Cogs in a giant machine.
Exactly. Where things like individuality and creativity and compassion are just
gone,
sacrificed for efficiency and control.
Wow, that's a dark picture.
It is.
But is there anything we can do to stop it? Does he offer any hope?
Well, he doesn't give us a step-by-step plan.
What does he do?
He points us in a different direction.
All right, so where were we? Oh yeah, Ellul's warning about technique potentially turning us all into, like, robots or something.
Right, like cogs in a giant machine, sacrificing our humanity for the sake of efficiency.
Not the most cheerful thought, to be honest.
Definitely not. But I think it's important to remember that Ellul wasn't just trying to scare us.
Okay, so what was he trying to do?
Well, he wanted to wake us up, to make us see the potential dangers of this technique mindset before it's too late.
So like a warning siren.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, hey, pay attention. There's a fork in the road here, and the path we're on might not lead where we want to go.
So he's not saying that technology is inherently bad.
Right. He recognized that technology has brought many benefits, but he was also acutely aware of its potential downsides.
It's like anything else, right? It can be used for good or for bad.
Exactly. It all depends on how we use it and how we let it shape our thinking and our values.
So where do we go from here? What's the alternative to this kind of bleak future that Ellul is warning us about?
Well, he didn't lay out a detailed roadmap, but he did offer some guiding principles.
Okay, I'm listening.
One of the most important, I think, is the idea of maintaining a connection to the non-technical aspects of life.
Okay, like what? Give me some examples.
Things like art, nature, spirituality, genuine human relationships.
So basically, the things that make us human.
Exactly. The things that nourish our souls and remind us what truly matters.
Okay, so it's not about rejecting technology altogether. It's about finding a balance.
Exactly. It's about making sure that technology serves us, not the other way around.
But that's easier said than done, right? I mean, technology is everywhere.
It is. But it's not impossible. It starts with awareness, with making conscious choices about how we interact with technology.
So like being more mindful about how much time we spend on our phones, for example.
Exactly. Or being more selective about the technologies we embrace.
Like asking ourselves if this new gadget or app is really adding value to our lives.
Exactly. Or if it's just adding more noise and distraction.
And it's not just about individual choices, right? We need to be thinking about the bigger picture, too.
Absolutely. We need to be having conversations about the kind of society we want to create and how technology can help or hinder that vision.
Like, what kind of world do we want to live in, and what role do we want technology to play in that world?
Exactly. It's about taking control of our destiny rather than letting technology dictate our future.
That's a powerful message. It's a call to action, isn't it?
It is. It's a call to be more intentional, more discerning, and more engaged in shaping the world we want to live in.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive into the technological society. It's been a challenging conversation, but I think it's been an important one.
I agree. Ellul's work is as relevant today as it was when it was first published.
And even though he didn't offer any easy solutions, I think his insights can help us navigate the complex world of technology and make more informed choices about how we want to live our lives.
He challenges us to think critically, to question assumptions, and to never stop striving for a more human-centered future.
So, to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. We encourage you to continue exploring Ellul's ideas and to keep asking these important questions about the role of technology in our lives.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay human.